Thank you very much for joining
We
me.
have like social distancing.
We can get closer if you'd like. I'm happy. All right. Nick Sathe, CTO and CPO of Blackhawk Network. For you, those of you who don't know, Blackhawk Network is a world leader in branded payments, gift cards, rewards, and incentives. Everybody here in this room, if you used a gift card, you have used a Blackhawk Network product. Customers include eBay, Google Play, T-Mobile, Target, Amazon, Best Buy. To save time, I'll just say customers include everyone. And they are a leader in agentic commerce, and we're a proud partner with Blackhawk Networks, and we're so happy to have Nick here. Nick has a engineering and product background, Nest, Google, and American Express, as well as PayPal, before joining Blackhawk Networks. So Nick, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Craig.
Awesome. So Nick, the first time that we met was actually at our first agentic commerce event just a couple months ago at Visa. And that was the first time we were showing some of these early ideas around agentic commerce. And I think what's amazing is from meeting you just a couple months ago to now having Blackhawk Networks agent ready with Skyfire has been an incredible, journey in a very short amount of time. And I think that says a lot about your team and the innovation behind what you guys do.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's I've never been introduced as a merchant before, so I think it's kind of interesting because at Blackhawk we are the infrastructure that distributes gift cards, that issues stored value content, both in the B2C and the B2B spaces. But we also sell gift cards directly to consumers and power about 1,700 brands e-commerce infrastructure. And so we are a huge merchant as well with several $billion in sales. And specifically, we're a merchant of a product that attracts a lot of fraud. And so all the things that Craig talked about, building that trust layer was super important to us. And the other side of the equation is that the products we distribute themselves can be useful in agentic payments. So we've had the benefit of looking at the problem from both sides, looking at it from the perspective of somebody who is a merchant that needs to accept payments and build that trust with consumers or businesses. We also have a huge B2B infrastructure. And then we also have to figure out how to make stored value products useful in agentic commerce, because while Visa and MasterCard are doing a really good job, and a lot of the other players in the space of figuring out how do you create merchant scoped, specific value, specific purpose products, guess what? A gift card is already all of those things, right? It's already a specific value. It's already scoped to a merchant and can be used for a specific purpose. So bringing that currency into the equation is another aspect that we're involved in as well, which makes all three parts sort of come together nicely when in working with Skyfire. And we'd been doing a lot of experimentation ourselves before that, and so hopefully, we were able to very quickly get something up and running. But it's painful, just like you said. So yeah.
Absolutely. And to that effect, we will have a demo later this evening of Ramp on the enterprise use case of buying gift cards, which we'll be excited to see. So just diving into the questions, when you think about what AI allows, how does that affect what you want to provide to your customers?
Yeah, so I think AI is changing everything from where consumers and businesses in the consideration process when you're doing research, and you're already seeing that. It's like 4,700% increase in the use of chatbots in shopping use cases. We've seen a huge increase in bots crawling our sites, and of course the industry data is even more relevant than that. But I think it's also frustrating when you find what you need, and then what? Right? So if you're using Gemini, you get a blue link and you go to the website, and the very traditional sort of end of search. And I think that more and more we will be seeing people delegate those actions to agents, and agents that are important for consumers to complete that task. I did a recent podcast with the All About Agents guys, Philippe. If you guys know of that podcast, it's kind of a fun fun set of guests that he had. But then also on the B2B side, we hear about AI leading to the SaaS apocalypse, right? And SaaS providers are going to go away. And I don't think that's going to happen necessarily, but there are lots and lots of things that you can enable, and you'll see that in the demo today, that in the past you had to go buy a SaaS product that did, for example, sales rewards to customers or prospects that attended a demo. You had to go buy a product that did that managed that, some of your CRM products. But now you could just write a very simple agent that says, hey, go find out not just who was invited to this meeting, but who attended, and then send them a reward, the $10 that you promised them or whatever it was. So I see a lot of those sorts of things also becoming extremely easy for businesses to do themselves without necessarily having to make those investments in vertical SaaS products that they might not use that often.
Right. So you mentioned the SaaS aspect of this. When you think your business is unique because you have such a massive enterprise B2B flow, you have a massive B2C flow. Is there a difference between what you need to be able to provide for the B2B flow for agentic commerce versus what you need to provide for the retail B2C?
Yeah, so I think it's almost a spectrum. So you have the ease of use and the immediacy of completion, low friction that you have to provide for consumers. That sort of expands into what we call the direct B2B business. These are people that want to do a one-time purchase of something. It could be a bunch of gift cards. But then as you go to the other end of the spectrum, where you're talking about large organizations, you mentioned T-Mobile or Verizon, that do switcher campaigns. So these are campaigns where if you switch from your current provider to Verizon, they'll send you a $200 Visa gift card. Those are massive, hundreds of millions of dollars of programs. And guess what? There's workflows. There's a bunch of approvals. There's a bunch of funding requirements. We're certainly not going to put a $100 million program on a credit card. And so I think those aspects of what kinds of payment instruments, how do you commute or passport KYB information. Samir and I had this conversation on the phone the other day, and we're talking to Trulio as well, and Vicky Bindra there. Like, is there something that we need to do in the B2B world to create a trusted, verified business identity that can then be passported, so we don't have to then go and do the KYB for a consumer, because that's what happens in the B2B space. It's like, we can let you do $20,000 worth of transactions because that's what the money laundering rules and regulations allow us to do with very light authentication that KYA can provide you. But then the KYB part of it is going to be much, much more in-depth, that requires, credit history or some certifying authority to say, yes, this is good for the kinds of use cases. So I think that complexity we still have to figure out, but I think that the KYA pieces, and we were joking, it's like KYA, KYB, KYC. So somehow we're going to have to get the ABCs of KY, taken care of. So, but I think it's that combination that's going to be tricky, and I'm not exactly sure what that's going to evolve into, but hopefully we'll be able to partner to get there.
Absolutely. So maybe we talk a little bit about fraud. So, if you could talk a little bit about fraud as it relates to agentic commerce. You mentioned this transport of information on the user. How does fraud come into play with agentic commerce? And then how do things like KYA help Blackhawk networks make a determination of when to allow a transaction and when not?
Yeah, look, I think anyone that's involved in e-commerce knows that we have spent probably the last 2 decades figuring out how to fight bots, right? Block them, stop them, identify them. Now we have to figure out good bots from bad bots. I mean, that's the most obvious thing. And certainly the KYA protocols and some of the capabilities that bring to the equation, the partnerships that are happening out there, and the standards that are evolving will help us make sure that we allow the good bots, but not the bad bots. There's another aspect of fraud that sometimes we sort of a lot of our fraud detection techniques are built on a human at the other end of the wire, so to speak, right? So we have tools like device fingerprinting technologies. We have, how do we know how fast somebody is typing, how fast they're moving their mouse? All of those behavioral signals that we can absorb. We have mitigations and step-up mechanisms like captchas, and we have, solve this puzzle. I mean, all that stuff just goes out the window. And so how do you get, the same benefits that those things that offered in terms of the step-up capabilities integrated into the infrastructure so that we know who the agent is, we know that the consumer has delegated trust to that agent, and that agent can interact with us. And by the way, and we can trust that agent with some sort of non-repudiation because, as you said, when a chargeback comes around, we have to then go and prove, and if there's a cryptographic proof that this agent was commuting the trust that came from the consumer and we trusted it, then that becomes our defense as a merchant in these use cases, which, as I said, for us, it's super important because, it is far easier for somebody to go, get $1,000 worth of value for a brand that's highly fensible through a gift card infrastructure than it might be if they have to have it shipped to a physical address and all of these things. So, we have to take that stuff very, very seriously. And so, I know it's been agonizing sometimes when our security teams have worked together to say we've got to make sure that all these things are ticked and tied. But I think we've got now a great solution and a great way to do that.
Absolutely. So, Nick, last question from my side. You've talked about this on a couple of the podcasts, and you talk about this problem of fraud. It'd be a lot easier if everybody in the entire world was just on the same platform and lived on the same application. That isn't how the internet works today. And so I think there's a lot of things coming out regarding the growth of walled gardens versus an open internet approach to solving these problems. I was hoping you could talk a little about your thoughts of what that looks like in the future.
Yeah, so I'll first put a disclaimer out there. These are not Blackhawk's views, these are mine, okay? Because at the end of the day, we work with all of the large providers. I hope that the fundamental principle that if you offer agentic solutions, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or Google or whoever the AI platform provider might be, that they take the fact that the agent has to work in the best interest of the consumer or the business at heart, not in the best interest of the platform. Because if that is the bar that everyone operates towards, then I think we will get to an environment where there is a common set of interoperable standards where those sorts of things will happen. So the example that I've used before, and this is not an endorsement of Google or AdWords, was imagine if AdWords didn't exist when Google search was first launched, and Google just decided who was going to win in e-commerce, and said, Amazon, if you want us to route all of your transactions, all product search to you, pay us $1 gazillion and we'll do it. So I think, whatever you think of AdWords and whatever you think of Google's monopoly, creating that level playing field in AdWords where people could, through economic means, guide the consumer to the right solution. I think that was, again, and in favor of the industry and sort of still leaving the ultimate choice to the consumer if they clicked on that ad or if they clicked on an organic link. So I think, that kind of model, I think, is going to be necessary for us to be able to open up the playing field because we also struggle with which standard to support, right? I mean, there's the standard du jour, and it's you've got AP2 and UCP on, from Google, and you had ACP from Stripe and OpenAI, and then they abandoned that. Now Stripe is actually trying to standardize on some of those things. But I think the key is going to be we've got to get that last S out of standards. We need one standard that everyone can collaborate around. That'll make it a lot easier for merchants like us to say, say, okay, now we can play in all of these environments, which I think will also make the pie much bigger, much faster.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nick from Blackhawk Network. Thank you.